Isla Monroe had always known she didn't belong in her own family. Even as a child growing up in the sun-washed neighborhoods of Savannah, Georgia, she could feel it. The quiet distance in her mother's eyes, the clipped tone of her father's words, the way her younger sister, Lila, was treated like a gift from heaven, while Isla was treated like the unwanted echo that came after. She could sense things, not just emotions, but intentions. The flicker behind a smile, the tremor in someone's voice when they lied, the subtle shift in a heartbeat when guilt rose to the surface. Her mother, Diane, called it paranoia. Her father, Gregory, dismissed it as daydreaming. Lila, with her angelic curls and perfect dimples, called it creepy. But Isla's intuition wasn't imagination. It was real, and it had saved people before. When she was 12, she'd told her gym teacher that the new substitute coach made her uncomfortable. Nobody listened. 2 weeks later, the man was arrested for theft and harassment after another student's parent uncovered evidence. When Isla's warning came true, her mother didn't praise her. She scolded her for spreading rumors. That was the first time Isla learned that being right didn't always mean being loved. Years later, that same intuition guided her again, but this time, it changed her life. At 28, Isla worked from a quiet apartment overlooking the Savannah River. Her family thought she was unemployed, wasting her life working on a laptop for fun. In reality, she was one of the most discreet and sought-after consultants in the Southeast. She had built a hidden career helping small companies recover from the brink of collapse. She didn't need offices or staff, only her mind, her instincts, and the network she'd built through her mentor, Evelyn Rhodes. Evelyn was a sharp, silver-haired business strategist from Boston who had discovered Isla by accident. Years ago, Evelyn had hired Isla to analyze a struggling tech firm's data. What should have been a one-week project turned into a revelation. Isla uncovered hidden fraud within the company's leadership, saving Evelyn's client millions. Evelyn didn't just hire her again, she trained her. "Your intuition," she once told Isla over coffee, "isn't strange. It's your compass. The problem is the world is full of people who can't read maps." Isla carried those words like armor. But armor doesn't always stop wounds. Her family still saw her as the invisible one. When they called, it was always about Lila, her promotions, her new car, her charity events. And now, the biggest news of all. Lila was getting married. The announcement came on a Wednesday morning in April. Her mother sent a group text with a glittering picture of Lila's engagement ring, a diamond the size of a raindrop, and a caption that said, "Our perfect girl found her forever." No mention of Isla. No call to ask how she was. Just an invitation link buried in the message. The Monroe Wells wedding. October 8th, St. Augustine, Florida. Isla almost ignored it. She almost deleted it, pretended it didn't matter. But something about the fiancé's photo made her pause. His name was Ryan Wells, and his smile was too polished, too exact, like it had been practiced. His eyes didn't match it. They were cool, watchful. Her stomach tightened. She didn't know him, but she sensed something dark beneath his charm. Not evil, but hollow. She told herself to stop overanalyzing. She wasn't invited as a psychic. She was invited as a sister. But the feeling didn't go away. The months that followed blurred into work and silence. Isla helped 2 companies stabilize after financial crises, spent her evenings walking along the riverfront, and occasionally took calls from Evelyn, who was semi-retired now. When October came, she packed a navy blue dress and drove to St. Augustine. The city was beautiful, cobblestone streets, old Spanish architecture, golden light spilling through oak trees. The wedding was being held at a luxury hotel overlooking the bay, hosted by the Wells family, who, according to her mother, were prominent real estate developers. From the moment Isla arrived, the difference in treatment was obvious. Her mother greeted her with a polite hug, then immediately began fussing over Lila's hair. Her father shook her hand instead of embracing her. Even Lila, glowing in silk and lace, looked at her with the kind of tight smile people give when they're tolerating a guest out of obligation. "You made it," Lila said. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I said I would," Isla replied calmly. "Well, it means a lot," Lila said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "Just try not to bring up your weird feelings tonight, okay? This day's about happiness." "I wasn't planning to," Isla said. Her sister's friends whispered as she passed. One of them giggled and said, "That's the sister who works online, right?" Another murmured, "Freelancer, means unemployed." Isla ignored them. She had learned long ago that silence often spoke louder than defense. The ceremony itself was flawless. White roses, golden light, violins, the kind of wedding magazines drool over. Ryan stood tall beside Lila, every inch the charming groom. When he smiled for the camera, the crowd swooned. But Isla saw the flicker again, the faint twitch in his jaw when the officiant mentioned lifelong partnership. Something was wrong. During the reception, things began to unravel. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and champagne, laughter and clinking glasses. Isla sat at a table in the back, alone, while her family mingled near the front. She didn't mind. Solitude was her comfort. Until Lila approached. Isla blinked once. "You want me to leave?" Lila gave a small shrug. "You know how Mom gets about appearances. You being here alone, it just kind of kills the vibe. You understand, right?" Isla stared at her sister. The same girl she'd once defended from bullies. The same girl whose college loans she'd secretly helped pay off years ago without ever taking credit. "Yes," Isla said softly. "I understand." She stood, adjusted her dress, and said, "But before I go, Lila, you should know something." Lila frowned. "What?" "Not everyone here is who they pretend to be." Her sister rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, here we go again." But before she could finish, a voice rose from the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," said a tall man at the microphone, Daniel Wells, Ryan's older brother. His face was tense, his voice trembling. "I can't do this anymore." The room froze. Daniel looked straight at Ryan, then at the guests. "You all deserve to know the truth. The Wells Group, our family's company, went bankrupt 6 months ago. My brother doesn't have any fortune left. This wedding..." His voice cracked. "This wedding was his way to secure money. Your daughter's trust fund, to be exact." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ryan stood up, shouting, "That's not true." But Daniel held up documents, printed proof, bank records, debt notices. Lila's face turned white. Her father's jaw dropped. Isla didn't move. She simply whispered, "Now you understand." And then, as if fate had timed it perfectly, an older man approached the commotion. It was Mr. Alcott, the CEO of Lila's company, who had been invited as a guest. He stared at Isla. "You're Isla Monroe, aren't you?" The crowd turned to look. "I knew it," he said. "You're the consultant who saved Alcott's systems last spring. You found the accounting leaks no one else could. You saved hundreds of jobs." The room fell silent. Lila blinked. "You what?" Mr. Alcott smiled warmly. "Your sister's one of the most brilliant minds I've ever worked with. And I never even knew she was your sister." For the first time in her life, Isla saw her family speechless. She didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She simply gathered her bag, thanked Mr. Alcott, and walked toward the door. Daniel followed her out. "I'm sorry for what happened in there," he said quietly once they were outside. "I didn't know how else to stop him." "You did the right thing," Isla replied. He studied her for a moment. "You knew, didn't you? About Ryan." She gave a faint smile. "I felt it." Daniel laughed softly. "Then I guess your intuition's a lot sharper than mine." As they stood under the soft glow of the hotel lights, the sounds of chaos erupted behind them. Shouting, crying, the unraveling of a perfect illusion. For Isla Monroe, it was the sound of freedom. For the first time, she wasn't the unwanted one. She was the one who saw clearly, and walked away whole. From the ballroom as Isla and Daniel stepped outside, A warm Florida breeze carried the scent of salt and roses across the hotel terrace, but the chaos inside felt far away, like a storm she had finally outrun. For the first time in years, she felt weightless. Daniel stood beside her, loosening his tie, his face pale from everything that had just happened. "I didn't plan to do that," he said quietly. "I just couldn't sit there and watch him lie anymore." Isla glanced at him. There was exhaustion in his eyes, but also relief, the kind that came only after speaking a long-buried truth. "You did what you had to," she said. "Sometimes silence does more harm than honesty ever could." He gave a small laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. "That sounds like something you've learned the hard way." "I have." For a long moment, they just stood there, two strangers connected by a moment of ruin. The faint hum of the reception carried through the closed doors, mixed with the muted cries of guests whose illusions had just shattered. Daniel sighed. "You know, I thought tonight would be my brother's new beginning. Instead, it was everyone's ending." Isla looked at him and said gently, "Endings are often beginnings in disguise." The following morning, headlines spread like wildfire. Real estate scandal rocks high society wedding. Pictures of Lila in tears circulated online, alongside quotes from guests who couldn't believe what had happened. By noon, every major local outlet had the story. By evening, Harper Chronicle ran an exclusive interview with one of Ryan's former employees, confirming Daniel's revelation. The Wells Group had gone under months ago due to fraud and unpaid debts. Lila disappeared from social media. Her parents went silent. And Isla, for once, didn't feel like the villain in the story. She drove back to Savannah that night, windows down, music low, the city lights melting into the dark Atlantic horizon. Every mile between her and that wedding felt like another piece of her old life falling away. When she reached home, she sat on her balcony, barefoot, sipping tea. She wasn't smiling, not yet, but she was at peace. 2 weeks later, Evelyn Rhodes called. "Well," her mentor said, voice warm with amusement, "you certainly made headlines without trying." "I didn't make anything," Isla replied. "I just happened to be standing near the explosion." Evelyn chuckled. "Still, timing is a strange friend. Do you know how many companies have reached out to me asking if you're taking new clients? You're a ghost no longer, dear." "I didn't plan for publicity," Isla said. "Of course not. But sometimes the world finally catches up to who you are." Evelyn paused. "Tell me, how are you really?" Isla looked out at the river. "Free," she said softly, "and a little lonely." Evelyn hummed thoughtfully. "Freedom always feels lonely at first, but it's fertile ground for growth. Don't waste it." In the months that followed, Isla built something new. She registered her own firm, Monroe Strategic. Insight, a consulting agency for struggling companies seeking clarity. Her small apartment transformed into an office. Her dining table became a desk piled with files, notebooks, and steaming mugs of tea. Word spread quickly, not through advertising, but through whispers of reputation. She became known for an uncanny ability to read situations others couldn't. Within 6 months, she had 5 corporate clients, all thriving, and yet success didn't fill the ache left by years of emptiness. Sometimes in quiet evenings, she'd remember the look on Lila's face. Shock, humiliation, disbelief, and feel a flicker of sadness. Not guilt, not triumph, but grief for what could have been. She didn't miss their cruelty, but she missed the sister she wished Lila had been. It was late one Thursday when the past knocked. Again, literally, she opened her door and found Lila standing there, hair unkempt, eyes red, makeup smudged. She looked nothing like the glowing bride from that October night. "Hi," she said weakly. "Can I come in?" Isla hesitated for only a moment before stepping aside. "You can." Lila entered, clutching a worn handbag. She looked around the apartment. Tidy, modern, lined with plants and soft light. "I didn't realize you lived like this," she murmured. "What did you expect?" Isla asked quietly. "I don't know. Mom always said you barely made rent. I stopped telling Mom things years ago." Lila nodded, lips trembling. "He's gone. she whispered. Ryan disappeared the week after the wedding. He took everything from my account that he could access. I'm broke, Isla. I can't even pay next month's rent. Isla said nothing for a long while. The air between them was heavy, full of old ghosts and fresh wounds. Please, Lila said finally, voice breaking. I have nowhere else to go. Isla studied her sister. Not the spoiled perfectionist from before, but a woman cracked open by consequence. You can stay, Isla said at last, but under one condition. Lila looked up, desperate. Anything. Honesty, Isla said. No lies, no manipulation. If you want a roof over your head, you live by truth. Lila nodded quickly. I swear. The first few weeks were tense. Lila kept to herself, cooking quietly, cleaning without being asked. There were no cruel remarks, no superiority. Just silence, fragile, cautious silence. Sometimes Isla caught her crying at night, muffling sobs into a pillow. She never interrupted. Healing, she knew, needed solitude too. By December, their unspoken truce began to take shape. They shared small conversations. About groceries. About work. About nothing important but everything human. One night, when the rain pattered against the windows, Lila whispered, I used to hate you, you know. I know, Isla said softly. I thought you made me look small. But now I realize you were just real. And I was terrified of that. Isla looked at her for a long moment before replying. Maybe we were both terrified just of different things. Lila smiled through tears. It was the first genuine smile Isla had ever seen on her sister's face. January came with cold air and quiet. Triumph. Monroe's strategic insight was thriving. Companies invited Isla to speak at conferences not just for her business acumen, but for her insight into human behavior and intuition. She never used the word gift anymore. It wasn't something mystical. It was just her way of listening to the world. At one of those conferences, she ran into Daniel Wells again. He was standing near the exit of the event hall, dressed casually, holding a coffee. When he saw her, he smiled that same tired, kind smile from the night of the wedding. Miss Monroe, he said. I almost didn't recognize you. You look happy. I think I am, she said. How about you? Trying to rebuild. I started a small construction firm. Honest work. Smaller scale, but it's mine. That sounds right for you, Isla said. He chuckled. For a man who exposed his brother's con at a wedding, I suppose honesty was the only career left. They laughed softly together. The sound felt easy, natural. Can I take you to dinner sometime? He asked after a pause. Isla tilted her head, studying him the way she always did, reading the space between his words. There was no deceit there, no hunger for image or pity, just quiet sincerity. Yes, she said. I'd like that. Dinner turned into conversation. Conversation turned into companionship. They didn't rush. Daniel had his ghosts. Isla had hers. But slowly, trust began to grow, not the fragile kind built on need, but the steady kind built on understanding. He listened when she spoke. He didn't flinch when she said she could feel things others missed. In fact, he found it fascinating. You don't read minds, he said once, smiling. You just see people for who they are. Most of us spend our lives pretending we don't. Isla looked at him, surprised. That's the first time anyone's described it right. Well, he said, you once told me endings are beginnings in disguise. Maybe that night wasn't your ending after all. By the time spring arrived, life had transformed again. Lila found a job at a local nonprofit, working with housing programs. It was modest, but it gave her purpose. One evening, as Isla returned home from a client meeting, she found her sister cooking dinner, smiling, humming softly to herself. How was work? Isla asked. Busy, Lila said, turning off the stove. But I helped a family get approved for an apartment today. It felt good. You know, to fix something instead of fake it. Isla smiled. I'm proud of you. The words made Lila's eyes glisten. You have no idea how long I've waited to hear that from you. I think, Isla said gently, you've waited to hear it from yourself. Months later, at another conference in Atlanta, Isla stood before a crowd of hundreds of entrepreneurs, analysts, executives all eager to hear her speak about intuition in business. She told them about listening beyond numbers, about how human instincts, when sharpened, could see patterns machines missed. She didn't mention her family, her past, or the wedding that had burned her old life to ashes. But she carried it with her in every word, proof that even pain can become wisdom when faced with grace. When the applause ended, she stepped off stage, met Daniel's eyes in the crowd, and smiled. He smiled back, pride shining through. That night, as they walked along Peachtree Street under city lights, Daniel took her hand. "You've changed a lot," he said softly. "So have you. Do you ever think about that night?" "Sometimes," she admitted. "Not with anger anymore. More like gratitude. It gave me everything I didn't know I was missing." Daniel stopped walking, turning to face her. "You deserve everything you have now, Isla. The peace, the success, and more." She looked up at him, her heart steady and sure. "Maybe this is my more right here." He kissed her then, not a desperate kiss, but a gentle one, born of quiet understanding. Years later, when people spoke of Isla Monroe, they didn't talk about the girl who had been mocked for her intuition. They talked about the woman who rebuilt her life from truth, who taught others that clarity and empathy were not weaknesses but strengths. Her family eventually reconciled, cautiously, humbly. Her parents, once dismissive, came to her office one day and apologized. Lila stood beside them, hand in hers. "I'm not angry anymore," Isla said. "I just hope we've all learned." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "We have, sweetheart. We finally see you, and that was enough." On a quiet Sunday morning, years after that fateful wedding, Isla sat by the river once more. This time not in solitude, but with Daniel beside her, their hands intertwined. The sunlight shimmered across the water, soft and endless. She thought about everything she had lost, and everything she had found. Her peace, her purpose, her voice. For the first time in her life, Isla Monroe felt whole. Not because others finally saw her worth, but because she had always known it, deep down, waiting to be remembered. And now she was home,